All right, welcome back, everyone, to Out in Front with Annette. My name is Annette Magnus, and I'm the Executive Director of Battleborn Progress. Tonight, we have on our fabulous team Maria Teresa Lieberman, our Deputy Director, and Will Pregman, our Communications Director. Mike, who's our Tech Director, is going to try and hop in and out if he can, having some video issues, but we wanted to make sure we still came live to all of you. So tonight, we're going to be talking all about what is happening at the Nevada legislature. The legislature obviously started this week, and we couldn't be more excited about that. There are a lot of topics that we're going to talk about tonight that are on our agenda to watch this legislative session. But before we get to that, I just want to do a quick recap of the Progressive Summit that happened this past weekend. Thank you, everyone who joined us for that. There were so many amazing panels and things like that. We will be having an email go out to our entire list that has the videos from the Progressive Summit, also evaluations and follow-up materials for those speakers. So if you attended the summit, be sure to watch your email because that'll be coming out sometime next week. In addition to that, we also have Progressive University that's coming up. Again, next week, we will be discussing gun violence prevention on Monday evening at 6:30 p.m. We'll be sending the Zoom registration link around to you shortly via email and text message. So if you want to sign up to get involved with Progressive University, which is our continuing education program for our Progressive Summit, let us know. We want you to be involved with that. And we'll put the RSVP link in the chat below as well. So, Maria, Will, anything that stood out from the Progressive Summit for you all? Any highlights from the Progressive Summit? Maria, I'll go to you first.
Yeah, my highlight was, oddly enough, our platform, our digital platform that we use, Remo. I think that was one where we didn't know what we were going to get, but it was so cool to be able to virtually be at a conference floor with folks. And when us as staff got a chance to mingle around, actually be able to walk around and see people at different tables and chat with you, as opposed to, just being on a regular Zoom. It was super virtual, and we got to show off our awesome sponsors that really helped make this event happen. And that was something that we really wanted to do, and we were able to do that in a fantastic way. And that, frankly, was the most amazing thing, because it was literally a virtual version of what we do every year.
Awesome. Will, go ahead.
Yeah, I think the Progressive Summit, as always, is a time for elected officials and our community leaders to be in one space, all talking about issues that are relevant to today. And I think the Progressive Summit 2021 was no different, in that we had a variety of different panels and subjects on what's going on with COVID and what the state is doing about that, whether they're an agency or a legislative body or a local city or county. There was a lot of information and good links and resources and people to follow for further information. And that's going to be part of the stuff that we're going to be sending out next week in preparation for, well, I guess in getting through the summit. It always comes with a follow-up. And so you're going to be able to access that information and find those folks who spoke at the summit and follow them for more detailed information and ask them questions that you have that you maybe didn't get to answer because of a limited time that we had. So be on the lookout, like I said, like Annette said, for email next week on all of our follow-up content from the summit. It was a really exciting event, and I think folks were pretty happy with it, and I was happy with it too. We had a fantastic program and a fantastic team putting it all together, from the ad book to the tech side to the emceeing that Annette did, all very spectacular. It was a really great event.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Will. So I want to move to the Progressive Summit, to the legislative session, because I know that's why we're here tonight to talk about this. And we really want to lay out, some of the things that we're watching, what our agenda is going to be, some of the things we're going to be tracking this session. I know a lot of questions have come to me about that. So, Will, what are some of the things that you are most interested in watching this year from, BBP's perspective, but also your personal perspective as well, with the issues that we work on?
Yeah, so of course, COVID is the big one. I won't talk too much about that because I think we're going to spend a lot of time getting into what that all means. But when it comes to what BBP specifically is watching, of course, gun violence prevention, as we're going to talk about on Monday on Progressive University, is one of the flagship issues of our organization. So we're looking at strengthening those laws. Our sister organization, Institute for Progressive Nevada, actually recently just put out a report with Center for American Progress, or CAP, as we call them, to talk about 6 ways we could deal with gun violence in Nevada. And it looks at ways to address gun violence through strengthening laws in regards to hate crimes, to repealing preemption, which is something we've been talking about for the past 2 years at least, and ghost guns, which is a pretty new phenomenon. So we're looking at legislation to do all of those things, and look forward to seeing that roll out as the bill drafts get drafted. Some other things that I'm looking forward to are bills on climate action. This is another area that we work on significantly and is something that, of course, matters to pretty much anyone who's a Nevadan who intends to live here for the next decade and beyond, which is that what are we going to do about the fact that we have a worsening climate situation in a state that's already contains at least 2 of the fastest warming cities. There's a lot that needs to be done around improving infrastructure, transportation infrastructure to accommodate for electric vehicles and accommodate for mass transit and things like that. We also need to be meeting our carbon reduction goals, and that's going to require some changes to building and infrastructure changes, including curtailing the use of methane, or as a lot of people say, natural gas. Those kinds of things are needed from, and that's going to take a lot of hard work. And so we hope that the growth and infrastructure and energy committees work hard on doing those things as well. And then lastly, we're going to probably get into this more in this call, but we really need to raise revenue in this state. And there is multiple options on the table for that, but I think the lightning rod is making sure that mining industries pay their fair share into our economy as well. That's the mode of doing business in the state where you can come here and enjoy all sorts of benefits, but don't pay into the actual state and its students and its healthcare system. All of that needs to change. We need to make sure that we have a functioning society from which to build on top of businesses to thrive here. And I think that's going to be the shift that we're going to have to, and we're going to have to see legislators really do the road and actually take a stand for revenue, not just for dealing with our current crisis, but for the long term 2 years of, or not every 2 years, but every 10 years or so of there's an economic crisis, so we have to slash to the bone, we have to slash healthcare to the bone. It's not right. So I hope that there is a real concerted debate and effort to change that this session.
Get into the budget in just a little bit more. Thank you for that, Will. I think that was really awesome. Maria, I want to move to you as well. What are some of the things that you're interested in looking at, talking about this session, and what are some of the things that are personally important to you as well?
Well, I think that number one, personally, and you can tell by my background, it's voting rights. That's probably one of my favorite topics this session because we really made a lot of progress that we have to defend. We saw that today. If you were one of the 20 people watching with me on YouTube, the joint committee, the joint election committee, you got to see some of our not so friendly for voting rights people attacking the guy behind me, Registrar Joe Gloria. So protecting the voting access bills that we were been able to do since the last 2 special sessions and legislative sessions is going to be of ultimate importance for everyone. And also the death penalty. This sort of ties into the budget because we pay a lot of money for a death chamber that we don't use. So, that's one way that we can look into saving money, but also it's the right to do because for many reasons, we could do a whole hour just on the death penalty. That's going to be a big issue. And sort of related to that, criminal justice. The racism and the systemic racism, especially in our criminal justice, more like injustice system, is a pandemic, and it's one that we can't wait another 2 years to address. And so it needs to be addressed in some capacity. And so we're looking forward to holding our elected officials accountable to do just that.
Absolutely. I'm so glad that you brought up criminal justice reform. I think for me, that's probably one of the most important things this session that we'll have the opportunity to work with many of our coalition partners on. And I'm really looking forward to that as well. We've already started meetings with legislators this week. We've been talking to a lot of them about many of the issues that both of you brought up. I do want to move to the budget, though, because I do think that is going to be the hottest topic this session for many reasons, one of which Will brought up because we historically have always kicked the can down the road on the budget. We have not made significant budget updates to the way we raise revenue in this state since 1961. My mom will probably kill me for this, but that is as long as my mother has been alive, and she was born and raised in Nevada. So you can just think about, she went through the Clark County School District, I went through the Clark County School District, and we have not had any significant revenue changes in the entire time her and I both have been alive. That's a long time. And so we cannot continue going at this the way that we have been. Will, I want to move back to you. Not just the mining situation, but really revenue generally. Let's talk about maybe some things that we're hopeful that our elected officials will do this session to finally start to really address the revenue situation in the state in a real way.
Not much of an economist. I'm proficient at knowing many things, but I'm not a big numbers guy. But I do think that the thing that we're looking at when it comes to the mining situation is not only making sure that they're paying their fair share, but that the externalities involved in mining is also dealt with, which includes things like cleanup of the environmental damage that they do and things like that. But there's also talk about addressing revenue with things like property tax. And I know that's been an issue on the legislative calendar now for a couple of sessions. I remember it being talked about when I was an intern. I remember it being talked about when I worked at a different job in 2017. So figuring out what our property tax formula is and how that can support particularly local governments in addition to just the state, I think is going to be big for making sure that we have some sort of revenue structure at the local level to deal with paying state employees, county employees, our healthcare workers, things like that. And a lot of this also depends too on federal stimulus. Right now, we are anticipating debate on the Biden rescue package at the federal government, talking about improving state and local government outcomes by funding them and including that in the relief package, which we haven't done for the past couple that have been passed. And so that's going to be really important because while we're doing better than expected as per the numbers that Governor Sisolak cited in his State of the State, we're still not at the level that we need to be. We're still about, I think it was about half a trillion behind where we need to be for our budget in the biennium. So in order to meet that, we're also going to need help from the federal government, because even if we were to somehow magically get rid of coronavirus tomorrow, we're not going to be at the same level of people coming to our hotels and our casinos and our resorts and things enough to bring in the revenue that we need to sustain essential services, whether it's sending kids to school or our public hospitals or our roads and infrastructure, maintaining our unemployment office and our welfare offices, which are also really, really struggling hard at this time with so many people out of work. So in order to do those things, we're going to need federal relief too, and that's where it's going to be on the Biden administration and the new Senate Democratic majority and the House Democratic majority as well to put through a robust relief packages that funds frontline workers and also funds our state and local governments. And that's going to be really key for municipalities all across the state.
Great. Thank you for that, Will. And Maria, anything you want to add? I know, we all actually went through the Clark County School District. Talk to me about revenue, but also talk to me about the importance of being able to do revenue this session, but also do other issues and work on other issues this session as well, and the importance of being able to hopefully multitask by these legislators.
Yeah, so just to put it bluntly, if Biden can deal with Yemen and the American Rescue Plan in one day, we can walk and chew gum at the same time here in Nevada. We elect folks to do this stuff, to multitask, and especially in a crisis. And so if, at the top, we can have many issues being addressed just in 1 week, imagine what we can do in 120 days if we actually put our heads to it, because there's a lot that can be done, even in this session, and even with the lack of resources that we have. I mean, it's the Nevada way to be scrappy, so I want my legislators to be scrappy because we can't wait another 2 years. So I think we need to do that. And, we are the federal government. I think we're at the time where, the federal government now, because of the Biden administration and the House, at least, and the Senate, they're going to do their part. We can finally, for once, because we don't have Trump, kind of relax and say oh, we're going to get the American Rescue Plan. We just need the Senate to actually take it up and do it. But, we don't have that excuse anymore. So I kind of want our legislators to speed it up and really put their heads together and really figure out how to, get into action, because we need to. I mean, people have been begging for more revenue, different revenue, diversifying our economy. But these different, equity type legislation, whether it's criminal justice or whether it's women's health or it's climate equity, we've been begging for years to do it. It's not the first time we're talking about this. So you can do it. You just got to want to do it. And I hope our legislators want to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And for the viewers at home, I apologize. My dogs are going crazy because my husband just got home from work. The joys of working from home. So I want to also talk a little bit about, healthcare this session. Maria, I'm going to come back to you. I know there's been a couple bills around healthcare, whether it's women's health or just generically healthcare overall, especially in a pandemic, and funding, mental health services and things like that. Talk to me about what's on the agenda and what some of the stuff we're starting to track and see right now.
Yeah, so we are going to see quite a bit when it comes to healthcare, especially hopefully bringing back some of the cuts that were made to Medicaid, or bringing back the different programs, or restoring different things when it comes to the Medicaid program, and maybe even allowing for more, for looking into more ways that Medicaid can help Nevadans. And the other thing that you're probably also going to see is a lot of women's health in general, health care that mostly affects women, bills and legislation. For example, there's actually one that I think is really cool, and it's kind of like a dark horse of legislation. And that is that doulas there might be some bills around doulas. And for folks that don't know, doulas are essentially advocates for pregnant women, and a lot of times women of color and underrepresented women need a doula to be able to advocate for them, to help them in the pregnancy process. And so that is going to be something huge. We're also going to see a lot around access to telehealth, which will be extremely helpful for our rural communities. One of the biggest things is phone conversations being part of telehealth, not just like a Zoom call with your doctor. So making little tweaks like that make healthcare just a tiny bit more accessible can be a huge difference in someone's life. So I'm really excited for those things and more.
Absolutely. One of the things also, Maria, I think that we'll be keeping an eye on is SCR 10 from last session, which was looking into potentially doing a public option for this here in the state of Nevada. Have we seen any movement on that or anything we're hearing on that yet?
I hope to actually have more news on that in the next few weeks, but things are kind of first week, it's homecoming, it's the honeymoon period for session. So, hopefully in the next few weeks we have more. What we do have is, if you're a nerd like me, you can go on Nellis and see the report from the committee on that. And so basically right now, what I assume legislators are doing are dutifully looking at that and seeing what it is that are the next steps that we can take. Because for folks that don't know, what that bill that Annette mentioned does is it created the study to really see if that can be accomplished. So I hope legislators are looking at that and really taking it up into consideration, because we have a lot of folks whose healthcare has been lost or affected because of attacks on our healthcare and the Affordable Care Act. And so this is something that we can do to protect folks' access to healthcare here locally, just in case we get another Trump again, which, God willing, knock on wood, we never do. But so hopefully in the next few weeks, we have more news on that.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Maria. So one of the things that I also want to talk about, Will, really quickly, and you alluded to this earlier with your comments around gun violence prevention, is, we've been working on gun violence for a really long time at BBP and IPN. And there has been some work in previous sessions that we have done together. Talk to me about some of the COVID-related bills that we're potentially looking at for this session and hopeful that we might be able to get through.
Sure. So going back to the report that I mentioned before, and I don't know if these will be combined into one bill or if these will be separate bills, but these are kind of the main reforms that we're looking at for the session. The first one is the status of essential businesses and whether or not that includes gun stores. If you recall, at the very beginning of the pandemic, almost a year ago now, which is horrifying, we had a shutdown, stay-at-home order that affected pretty much every commercial business except for ones that were deemed essential. Well, it turns out that gun stores actually fall under the category of essential business because of a rather peculiar law that was passed a few sessions back that we didn't really think would matter until a time such as this, where you saw huge lines of people outside of gun stores right at the beginning of the pandemic. And it's still, I think, because of people just buying more firearms. And certainly people should be allowed to buy firearms if they're eligible to do so. But of course, it's a little bit troubling when people are already in a state of fear and paranoia, whether that's justified or not, and simply going to a gun store to pick up a weapon that they may or may not be trained on how to use, or simply stockpiling more guns and ammo that essentially puts them or others around them statistically at further risk, is a troubling thing. And so we would like to see a policy this session that would remove gun stores from the designated list of essential businesses. Another one we're looking at talks about hate crimes. So we want to make sure that hate crimes are one of the crimes to which you can lose your right to essentially have a firearm. This applies in many other cases of violent crime but hate crimes is not necessarily one of them. And as we're seeing around the country, as we're reckoning with white supremacy and white supremacist terrorism and the impacts that has, we really can't allow people that are convicted of hate crimes to also be allowed to carry firearms too, because we understand the violent nature of this rhetoric and the way that it's escalating seemingly all the time. It's really not a good recipe to have guns and hate crimes mixing. The third thing is, like we talked about before, preemption. So currently our local or our county commissions, specifically the Clark County Commission, which has authority over the Las Vegas Strip, doesn't have the ability to create its own firearm laws that are more strict than whatever the state sets. And that is a concept called state preemption. And we've been talking about this for a couple of years. What we want to see is a repeal of that so that the Clark County Commission and other county commissions, if they want to, can make laws to control the use of firearms on the Las Vegas Strip and other properties within their jurisdiction. And we believe that this will be necessary to help curb gun violence on the Strip. And as we've seen recently, there have been a lot of shootings, luckily, not mass shootings yet, but we've seen an uptick of gun violence occurring on the Strip, and that's very troubling. And so, again, that's something that the county commission currently has no control over. And so we want to make sure that they're empowered to have that control. And then the next one, let me grab my notes here. I think we covered most of the big ones. But, ghost guns. That's what I want to talk about. See, I had it. You just need to give me a second. Ghost guns.
So I never doubted you.
There's this troubling uptick of that we're seeing of people that are buying these 3D printed or partially assembled firearms online through online retailers, or pieces of guns that they assemble into a fully working firearm. And they do this to avoid having a firearm that has a serial number on it so that it could be traced and tracked in the event that it's used in the commission of a crime. And the reason that's a problem is because if you can't trace a firearm, it makes it very difficult to track down a suspect in the event of a shooting. It's also a preferred tactic of what we're seeing with a lot of hate groups and these white supremacist groups that we talked about before, is that they'll use guns that aren't traceable in these crimes, and they promote the use of these guns on their forums and where they organize online to avoid accountability, essentially, for using a firearm. So we want to crack down on that and do something about these this concept of ghost guns. And I think this is something, again, we're going to get into more on Progressive University on Monday on how we crack down on those.
Sorry, Will. I was trying to get to my mute button. Thank you for that. That was great. So, I think there's a lot of stuff that obviously we all want to get done this session. But unfortunately, I just don't know how much of that is going to happen. And so, Maria, I know you've been following along with this conversation, and Will, obviously you have as well. Talk to me and talk to our viewers at home about the importance of really making their voices heard this session and how that's going to look, especially we're kind of monitoring it day by day with how people are supposed to register now and do testimony and stuff like that. So let's get folks up to speed on kind of the latest and greatest of what we're hearing about how to participate in session. I know, Maria, you've been following along with that the past 2 days. What are we hearing, and what might that look like right now?
Yeah, so if you take one thing away from this whole conversation and you want to make your voice heard, you, one, have to go on Nellis and you have to register to participate in a committee hearing. This is different than it was sort of during special session when you can just call in and press *9. You can still call in and press *9, but in order to get the number for that committee hearing, you actually need to register. And the way you do that is you go into the committee meeting link on Nellis that you want to do. And we'll make sure to show you how to do that on our Twitter when hearings come up, and click participate so that you can let them know. It's basically like signing in at Grant Sawyer. You're going to put your name down. You're going to put what bill you want to participate in and if you want to speak or not. And that is going to be the best way to make yourself heard. The most direct way is by registering and being in those committee meetings. If you cannot do that or you cannot make it, emailing your legislators, calling them and doing the usual things you would have done anyway during session. That is going to be super, super important. So if you can't make it to a committee hearing, make sure that they hear about what your opinion is, especially if your own legislator that you voted in, or even if you didn't vote them in, but they're your legislator, call them and let them know your opinion on something if they're on that hearing. And that is going to be the most important thing to do. And I think it's more important now than ever for, quote, regular people to do that, because the legislators are more insulated than ever before. Like Carson City is a bubble. Now it's an even tinier bubble, and they need to hear from you. And hopefully, you're able to do that. And if it becomes a little bit more accessible throughout the process, we will let you know. But so far, that's the way to be involved.
Well, what are your takeaways and suggestions for folks as you've been kind of following along with the process so far?
Yeah, I would say that I would definitely encourage everyone to make an effort to be vocal on bills they care about or bills that will impact their life. I think that we often get cynical. We think, well, the legislators don't care. They've already made up their minds. They had their caucus meeting or whatever. They've already made their decision. That's not always the case. And it's frequently not the case. I say that as somebody who formerly used to work for a legislator as an intern, that public comment and public testimony really can and sometimes does make a difference, especially when it comes to issues like this, where we're in such uncharted waters when it comes to how we deal with this crisis. There's a bill or something being heard that affects you and your life, and you have that experience. It's very likely that the legislators might not. And so you figuring out, and we'll help you do that. We'll figure out what time these hearings are being held. Hopefully not 3:00 in the morning, but no promises. We will be the ones to help you make sure you know where to dial in, where to RSVP on the link or whatever to join virtually, so that you can have a voice in that process. But even if you don't get to speak at the hearing, definitely emailing or writing to or phone calling your legislators, or texting them even if you've got their number, about a certain piece of legislation and telling them that this is wrong or that this is right. You should definitely also tell them if they're doing the right thing too, because they're probably getting pressured by some group of well-funded suits to push them against doing the right thing. So definitely also reach out when it's something that they're doing that's good. And because you never know, when you exert that pressure of you as a citizen and as a constituent and a voter, you're making it difficult for them to go through with decisions that maybe they would otherwise make that might be against your favor, or that, maybe they're close to doing something that you want them to do, but maybe they back off because, again, a lobbyist who makes $10,000 a month or whatever shows up in their office and tells them no. You want to put them in the position where they're thinking about you when they cast their vote. And so the way you do that is through continuous, respectful contact of your legislators through emails, writing them physical letters, phone calling them, texting them, and also showing up to committees to testify. And I know the last one is often hard to do because of the weird rules this year and because it's not always on everybody's work schedule and things like that. But Battleborn Progress, we're going to be here making sure that you have the opportunity and the information you need to do that when you can, and do it as often as you possibly can.
And can I add to that?
Yeah, no, this is your program. You all add whatever you want.
Guys, what I was going to call you Mike, different man with a beard that works here. Look, the weeks after Progressive Summits, everybody, are a day where the BBP team is we're just fighting to survive and talk again. So the I really want to highlight Will mentioning how really you, the folks at home that aren't lobbyists and that don't do that for a living, is of supreme importance. And if you ever hear of anyone saying that it doesn't matter what the public thinks, that you need to have some kind of direct access to legislators to really make a difference, that's bullshit, frankly, because at the end of the day, we always hear from legislators and have heard in past sessions, we want to hear from regular people. We want to hear from real people. So do it. And actually, you don't need to be a policy expert. You know, I think when I was not doing this for a living and I was a regular person paying attention, I was intimidated by the process. And if I would have been told by someone that just literally calling your legislator and saying, this bill pisses me off because this is how it's going to affect me and my family was powerful enough, I would have been involved much, much earlier than I was. So literally just saying that, what I just said, you really like this bill or it really pisses you off, is important. And it's the most important voice. The public's voice is more important than our voices here at BBP. It's more important than any lobbyists in the room. And I hope that that's the voice that legislators actually prioritize, because they always want to hear from regular people. So participate as much as possible. It's your house. It's your process.
That's right, Maria. Absolutely. Couldn't have said it better myself. And they would much rather hear from you than even from people like me, who I don't get paid $10,000 a month. That's for damn sure. But, you know, I do get paid to go up there and hold them accountable and talk to them. And they would much rather hear from the people at home than from people like me. You'll probably also be a lot nicer than I am. So you should do that. So let's open it up for questions that have come in. Maria, are you seeing anything in the chat? And if folks have questions, now is the time, obviously, to put those in there.
Yeah, so we have a question from Carlo. It's a little lengthy, so let me read it. But again, chat now if you have a question while I read this. So one is for us to please communicate to leadership. Lots of Democrats and independents live in Nevada's rural counties. We are disenfranchised from the local elections by closed primaries. Typically, only Republicans run for office in the rurals, and we get the worst of the worst when the Republican primary voters decide. So I guess that's, you know, what can we do about closed primaries? And then we can do Carlo's second half after. So Annette, do you want to take that?
Yeah, Carlo, I don't have a great answer for you right now. It's definitely something I can flag for folks as we're working on it. It is something actually in our meetings we have been flagging for folks around the primaries. Honestly, I can't make any promises this session, simply because this session is going to be a really tough one when it comes to changing anything around election law, just because there's no money to do those things. However, I do know that Speaker Frierson does have a bill, at least to change the primaries, or from the caucuses to the primaries. I know that doesn't help exactly what you're talking about. But also, I know that there has been some conversation around opening up the primaries in June that would normally happen in June. But I don't know where that is going this session, but it's definitely something we're keeping an eye on. Anything voting related, we are keeping an eye on, and we will go from there. I will tell you, the chairs of both of the legislative operations and elections committees this year are really great. So Assemblywoman Brittany Miller is the chair of Assembly Legislative Operations and Elections in the Assembly Chamber. And then Senator James Orenshaw is the chair in the Senate. So, you know, reach out to them. There's no reason you shouldn't be reaching out to them. Their information is easily accessible on the Nevada Legislative website. And you should just Google their names and get to know them and send them an email and tell them your suggestions. You can also reach out to your state legislators as well. It sounds like you live in a rural community, so you might have a Republican. You may not like what they say back to you, but you should reach out to them. But definitely reach out to the chairs as well. Like I said, it's Assemblywoman Brittany Miller and Senator James Orenshaw. And let them know your ideas, because I think it's important right now, especially this early in session, for you to weigh in that process and make your voice heard. And Maria, what's the second part of the question?
The second part is also we only have, as you just probably mentioned, Republicans representing us in the Senate and Assembly. So the rest of the body should actually not assume that all bills that come from the rurals are partisan, because there are progressive voters in the rurals, even though they are in the minority. And I guess that actually, if I could ask you two a question, a human being curious, how can folks in the rurals, or folks that maybe have a legislator that it's not so good, how can they be active, not just in this process, but potentially maybe even, in the long-term process of changing their community around and having some representation, like Mayor Danielle Corona in the rurals?
Yeah. Yeah, no, I think that's right, Maria. I think that he's a great example of somebody who is fabulous and progressive and working on all the right issues in a very conservative and rural community. And so I think he's a great example of how we can start to change the face of local politics and then hopefully end up getting to statewide and federal office as well. I think for our friends in the rural communities, I think, continuing to find other progressives in that community, build a strong coalition. But again, if you should always reach out to your legislators, even if you don't agree with them. That's my number one rule always. You should always reach out to them and tell them how you feel, even if you're not on the same side of the issue with them. But I would also say, do your homework, look where those bills are moving, look through the committees that they're moving through, and get to know who the committee chair is, get to know who, the different members of those committees are. And then, get to know when the bills are moving through which part of the process, because if you know that, then you can also reach out to other legislators who are on those committees or who might be taking votes on them through the different parts of the process. So still weighing in and making your voice heard, no matter where you live in Nevada, is critical, but also knowing the process empowers you to talk to other legislators, maybe who don't represent your exact district, but who will listen to you and take you seriously, maybe more so than your elected officials currently do.
And I would just add to that there was a good quote actually brought up today in the House of Representatives, of all places, as they were discussing the stripping of committee assignments from the QAnon congresswoman, which was the concept of vote your district. This is, I believe, a quote from the leadership at the Dem caucus there, but I think it applies when you think about what the rural representatives in the legislature, or any of the representatives of the legislature, frankly, deal with, which is that they're there to represent their district. If you are a progressive who lives in a rural district or a red district, and you have an issue with a piece of legislation, or you have an issue that you'd like them to advocate for, it's worthwhile still for you to talk to them and try to make the argument on their terms. If they're a conservative and they think that they don't want the government to spend any money or do anything, you can sometimes make the argument of this policy might lessen the need for government interference down the line or in other avenues. So there's a way to massage things, and occasionally we'll see rural representatives or Republican representatives just weirdly vote for progressive things sometimes because maybe somebody in their district got through to them, or because it affects their district in a unique way. You never know. So always try that. And I also will emphasize Annette's point too about the committee chairs thing. When I was an intern in the legislature, the assemblyman that I worked for had a bill that needed to move through the Judiciary Committee. And this was the year that the Republicans were in control. And so the chair of that committee was our good friend Ira Hansen. And so we had to do a lot of work to get on his good side. And that paid off in huge dividends when the actual hearing came up, because he was able to help steer the conversation in the direction we wanted it to, frankly, for our very progressive piece of legislation. And so sometimes there are weird alliances you can make that way, and also just ways that you can getting the just to say the committee chair thing is huge, because that literally dictates how the hearing goes down and what the procedures are and who gets to talk and for how long. And if you get that person on your side, you're looking in real good shape for getting whatever bill it is that you're trying to get passed or not passed. So reach out to them.
That's an excellent point. Well, thank you for that. Maria, did you want to add anything?
No, I think y'all covered everything. And so I hope folks were taking notes. We do have a couple more questions from the audience. One is Steve wants to know if we're working with other partners, other organizations on any bills and what that looks like. So what are other organizations working on that we're helping out on?
Yeah, a ton of them. It's actually, I think, what the three of us and the rest of our crew spends the most time on is our coalition work, and rightfully so. So obviously the mining bills is a collaborative effort, and I have to really give credit where credit's due. The mining issue is where it is today because of PLAN, Progressive Leadership Alliance of Nevada. They did the heavy lifting on that bill, and they did the hard work to get us to where we are today. And so working directly with them, as well as other community partners, is going to be really important. Same thing with voting rights. So we do that through our Silver State Voices coalition called Let Nevadans Vote. A lot of the partners that we work with in the community sit at that table, everyone from like Faith Organizing Alliance to Make the Road to Make It Work. Those are all groups that are a part of it. Can't forget our union partners. We have a Working Families Coalition that Maria leads. And a lot of our union partners, everyone from like ASME, which is state employees, and locally, UFCW, which is our grocery workers, SEIU, which is our healthcare workers, you name it, we're working with them. Same thing with women's issues, Planned Parenthood and NARAL historically take the lead on that, but we're obviously here to support them. The Death Penalty Coalition will be leading the work on the death penalty this year, but we'll be working with them on that. Criminal justice reform is historically led by groups like Mass Liberation, ACLU, Forced Trajectory Project, other groups like that. And so we'll be working with them. Gun violence prevention, we work with Brady, we work with Everytown, we work with Center for American Progress, Gifford. So you name it, we work with them in this community. Environmental policy, we work with the Nevada Conservation Network. So that includes like Great Basin Water Network and Nevada Conservation League and various other groups. So yeah, we're working with lots of people this session. And if you want to get involved with one of our fabulous coalition partners and you have questions about that, we'd love to give you that information, because the stronger we can make our entire community, the better off we are. And so really forging those communities, building those partnerships, that's an important part of what we do. And we're really proud of that work. Maria, you do a lot of the coalition work for us as well. Anything you want to add? Anything I missed?
That the coalition work is probably my favorite part of session, because that is when we really get to flex our muscle and flex your muscle, frankly, as the community. Because when you have organizations coming together and creating a strategic way that your voice at home can be heard, that's when you get things like mining lobbyists just absolutely freaking out because there's 8 hours of testimony of regular people asking legislators to be bold and tax mining and get money into the budget to fund our state. So you're going to be seeing a lot of that. And, I think that is more reason for you sitting at home to watch out, not only for what we're doing, but for what other organizations are doing and help them out. Because if you help one organization, you're helping all of us, because at the end of the day, we're all helping each other out. One last question from the audience is, will we have lobby days this year?
Yes, Maria, you should talk about that as a steering committee member for the Nevada Women's Lobby. And, obviously there will be other lobby days other than just the Women's Lobby, and we can talk about those. But talk about the Nevada Women's Lobby first, because they're our fabulous partners as well.
Yes, so the famous grassroots lobby days, which is all the lobby days are great, but it's my favorite because it's when everybody just comes together, packs a bunch of buses, and goes up to Carson City, and lobbyists look like they're shitting their pants just to continue cussing on this thing. So the lobby days, it's going to happen. It's going to be virtual, obviously. So it's going to look probably a lot like the summit using the same platform. So if you enjoyed Remo, I hope we'll see you again on there. It's going to be February, let me look at my calendar actually, February 21st and 22nd. And it's going to start in the morning. So if you want to, we're going to put the link for Nevada Women's Lobby Days in the chat, but you can register now. And it is going to be an exciting 2 days of learning how to lobby and actually being part of committees and testifying and virtually lobbying, which we're all kind of learning to do together. So I hope to see you all there, and more information. If you went to the summit, you'll get more information in your survival kit.
Awesome. Thank you for that, Maria. Before we wrap this up with any last questions from our chat, I think Ange on our team has a really good question, and I think it's really appropriate to wrap this up. So she asked, because she is new to the process, if serenity is now, when is the insanity start? And I think that is a wonderful question for the ebbs and flows of how the legislature works. So Will, do you want to take that one first?
Yeah, I would say that when the madness begins, usually is around the time that the final bill draft deadline passes, because that's the point when you realize, oh no, that bill I thought was coming isn't coming. Or you realize that, the bill that you wanted is not the bill that is drafted, and now there's a bunch of problems with it, and you're going to have to fix it. And so I think that's the point where the tension definitely rises. Certainly all of the committee and floor deadlines for votes tend to be pretty dicey, but usually that's just some late nights. And then I would say when the insanity really starts is probably when you get into that last 3 weeks or so, as the budget starts closing, and then you realize you might not have money to fund your thing, and then you're trying to amend out all the fiscal notes, and you're hoping to get your thing read in time and passed on the floor before the deadline, and sometimes it comes screeching right to the finish line, right a split second before it's time, before the clock strikes midnight and the deadline is hit, and that's when you really start to see the papers fly. Sine die, contains the word die, does not literally translate to die, but it feels like that because that's the last chance for them to do anything, and you're really hoping that whatever it is that you're pushing for makes it to the floor and is voted on tonight, because they literally will cut the person off mid-sentence and stop the vote, stop the count, as we say, at midnight, and nothing else gets heard. So that's why it's so critically important for public participation in the process, because once you get down to the wire of those last couple of weeks, things start to move very fast, and things have to move on a certain schedule. And if they don't move, you could end up SOL, because your bill could get stuck on a deadline or stuck in a committee and forgotten about in desk somewhere. And it could be a very, very important bill, like, say, same-day voter registration. So you never want that to happen.
Yes, and always the systems and policy wonk. So thank you for that. Yes, very thorough is what Alex on our team said, because that's how Will rolls. Maria, anything you want to add? I think Will really covered that one.
Yeah, Will really covered it, but he missed one moment, which we've all been at if you've been through this process. And for those like Angela who are going to encounter this moment for the first time, it's going to be when true insanity really hits your brain. And it's when in the Senate, they'll say, ask for 1 minute recess. And you're like, cool, all right, 1 minute recess. And you're like, they'll be back in like a minute or two. And it's been an hour. And you're like, Jesus, when are we going to get back to it? And usually when you're in person, you'd be able to be there and you're like, I see that, like you're, what's going on? It means that they kind of like Will was mentioning, there's papers flying, things have to be amended, a lot of, backstage insanity, literally. But that's when it really hits you. That's when you realize that time is non-existent and just a suggestion during the legislative process. And serenity is now when it was actually a 1-minute recess.
That's right, Maria. That's a great point. I think for me, and I'll just add to this because, Will's explanation was very technical. Maria's explanation was very shady and inappropriate. I think for me too, the other part, our staff is just texting us lots of funny things right now. I think the other thing that really sometimes boggles my mind, and I think it's going to be a little bit different, I'll be in the building and I'll be running from one house to the other. And then I'll be running from one committee room to another, texting Will, texting Maria. Oh my gosh, what's up? Can you cover this hearing? Can you cover that hearing? I don't know what any of that's going to look like this time, because I don't know how any of this is really going to work, because we've never been in a pandemic session before. And so I also think that there's going to have to be some flexibility from all of us, because I know, the legislators are trying. We're trying. I know LCB works really hard. They're trying, but it's not going to be a perfect or probably even a good system at this point. And so, trying to navigate that and figure that out, I think is going to be really hard and really interesting for all of us, even those of us who know the system. And so my one thing for you all is stay patient, follow along on social media with what's happening, and really check the legislative website every day, because things are going to be moving very fast and changing all the time. So I think, being flexible this session is it's always the name of the game, but it's going to be really important this session as well. And if you all need help, reaching out to our team, asking for help, because obviously we are here to help all of you try and navigate this session as we're trying to navigate it too. So yeah, I'm just laughing because Anne is asking me if I want to flip tables this session. Other people are asking me other questions. The answer is always yes. We will be there to hold people accountable. And, if I have to Teresa Giudice some folks, sometimes that's just got to happen. So, hey, Maria, I saw you come with the reference to the housewives.
Yeah. All options are on the table, including the table. So.
Mike, I know you can't come on video, but maybe you can just come on speaker for just 1 second. So talk to me about not having to ride on a bus for 8 hours and what that might mean to you this session. Let's see if he can come on.
Yeah. What that means to me, that is, it means everything to me. It literally means the entire world to me. My back thanks you. My feet thank you. My spirit and the crumpled up little ball that used to be my soul thanks you. Literally, it is the best thing in the entire world.
Yeah. I have to agree. I'm not sad about missing the bus ride this year. I will have to drive up in my own car so I don't, get COVID on a plane. But yeah. So, all right. With that, I'm glad I got to bring the good Reverend in tonight. Will, any final thoughts for our viewers tonight on navigating the session? Any final thoughts on, highlights from the session, or anything you want to make sure our viewers at home know?
Yeah, and I was going to say on the last point, too, I still get emails from the Carson Nuggets rewards email list. So anytime we want to go up there, I guess we could probably get, a buffet deal or whatever they have. But anyway, so takeaways. I think that because this is such a unique session, things are going to just work differently. And so if you're completely new to this process, I'm very sorry, but things, even for us who have been through this rodeo several times, there might just be new ways of doing things. Hopefully things will be clarified very soon on the participation angle, but we'll just have to wait and see. My advice would be to follow us, if you're not already, on Facebook and on Twitter, to make sure you have the latest news about what's going on. Make sure that if you're on Twitter, you follow the hashtag NVLEG, NVLEG. It is the universal hashtag that everybody uses to talk about legislative activity, and you could sort by most recent or top posts every day or every week to get a sense of what the conversation is online. I'll say we progressives have fun on there, and we use the NVLEG hashtag to talk about our issues and our campaigns. And so you can join in the fun by posting with that hashtag, or you could simply read along to see what's going on live on Twitter. I would recommend, too, that you go to the Nellis website. I don't know if we're going to post that in the chat, but go there, set up a account on there. It's free. You can track 10 bills for free on there. So find the bills that you're the most passionate about, or you can wait until some more of them are drafted, and as groups like us or Plan or other groups that you value the opinions of, you can track the bills that you're most interested in, so you can see what's happening on those and when the hearings are happening, and how to RSVP for the hearing and call in, and who's on the committee, et cetera, et cetera. So all of that is key to being effective as a citizen lobbyist, and you're going to get a lot more information from our pages and from the emails and stuff we're going to be sending out. So stay tuned for all of that. Make sure you're plugged in to our stuff, and mark our emails as not spam. Please do that. That's a real tip. I'm not being funny. I had to do it. We all have to do it. Just make sure that our stuff doesn't go into spam, because we're going to be sending out very crucial updates in the coming weeks about the legislature and how to participate. So be on the lookout for that.
Thank you for that, Will, and thank you for the handy spam tip. That's a real thing, and I had to do it too. All right, Maria, I want to bring you in. Any last thoughts, final wisdom, talking about session? And we'll do more of these throughout the session, obviously, every week. And unfortunately, I will be driving to Carson City soon to do out in front of the legislative building for all of you. So, Maria, come on in.
Yeah, so first, before I give my final bits of wisdom, we did get a late question from Arturo Gonzalez, our friend Arturo. Do you think remote will lead to, do you think working remote will lead to more productivity in this session? And did we learn how well the legislature works remotely from the special session? So I
you
think
want me
we
to
could
comment on that, Maria?
Yeah, I've got thoughts.
We'll tag team these thoughts. I don't think they learned anything from special session. From what I've seen, I actually think maybe the system might have gotten a little worse. We're going to find out. I have hope, but not a lot. In terms of productivity, so far from what I've seen, it seems to be moving about the same in terms of productivity. We're about the same part of where we normally see bills this session. We're about at the same part where, committees are just starting to kind of gear up and have the, initial presentations and stuff like that. So I don't really know if productivity will be better. I actually think their jobs might be a little harder because they don't have experts in the building. They don't have lobbyists in the building. They don't have the public in the building. And so they're not getting the direct feedback they would normally get in real time. A lot of the work got done in the elevator or in the hallways of the legislature, and that simply is not happening. And so, it's going to be even more important now to call and make appointments, which I've been doing with people's attaches literally all day today. And setting up coalition meetings on Zoom and stuff like that. And so in some ways, I actually think it might be a little harder to get things done this session because you don't have that information and the people who normally would be in the building as, accessible as you would normally have. Maria, what are your thoughts? Because I know you have a lot as you monitor this every single day, day in and day out.
Yeah, totally. I think that I don't know if it'll make things faster, and I don't know if they necessarily learned anything during special because, like Annette said, frankly, the real work gets done in person and in the conversations. Like if it ain't happening in the elevator, the couches on the third floor, it's probably also happening at Comma Coffee across the street. So, like that's where the real work gets done. And so I think, we have yet to see how this all is going to work out because, Annette being able to, chase down a legislator to, literally corner them on an issue was important work. And it also kind of frankly helps clarify things because sometimes legislators have lots of questions and the only time that you can answer them or that we can answer them as community organizations is when you're in person there and you just happen to bump into each other, and that helps the process. So we'll have to see. And my final thoughts are, other than do not mark us as spam, mark us as a legit sender, that session is important, that it is probably more important than elections. And because this is when legislators and others that we elected get to actually deliver on their promises. So we ask you to be involved all the time during elections. And I think it's just as important to be involved in session. So please be involved. And also, it's kind of fun because you get to have a lot of horror stories and war stories.
Yeah, horror stories is about right, Maria. I call them war stories. Okay, well, any other questions that came in on the chat for us before we wrap up this riveting session with Annette, Will, Maria, and sort of Mike? Maria, you seeing anything in the chat?
Oh, no, that was the last thing.
That was Arturo was our grand finale. What a fitting way to go out. All right. Well, thank you both for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. Thank you all for joining us on the feed. As always, stay tuned. We're going to have lots of stuff coming up for Progressive University. Alex on our team put the link to sign up for Progressive University on Monday in the chat. We will have more coming with that program over the next couple of weeks. So make sure you tune in for that. And then in addition to that, we will also be doing our first legislative update at the beginning of March. So make sure you tune in for that as well. That's really where we go through where the status is of all things legislature and really kind of make sure people understand where things are at. And we'll also do that on Out in Front as well. Like I said, I'm going to be going up to Carson City. So make sure you continue to tune in every Thursday night. And as we get updates on how session is progressing, we will definitely let you know. Session started on Monday. It ends May 31st by the Constitution. It has to end sine die on May 31st. And then we'll probably be going to a special session for redistricting. That's what we're hearing right now. So we'll be there every step of the way to give you information. So thank you all for joining us. Thank you, Maria and Will, for your time tonight. And we will be back next week, Thursday evening, with another Out in Front. So join us then. Thanks again, everyone.